Hello and welcome to day 2 in this intermediate pattern recognition video series. If you're new to this series, I have a beginner level. If you're a beginner, in the future I plan to do stuff for advanced and higher level players. But this is for intermediates. I have the level set at 1200 to 1350. And each video I'll add another 50 rating points. So, the next time it'll be from 1200 to 1400, then 1200 to 1450. So it'll slowly add higher level problems. And I'll try and get in at least 5 puzzles. And you can pause at any time if you need more time to think. But let's take a look at this. What do you do? If you're new to this, how do you begin to solve a puzzle or figure out what move to make in your own chess games? Well, count up the material. We have the white pieces. Black has just captured a pawn, I believe, here. They're attacking our rook, and they would like to trade off the rooks and then move their king down here, maybe try to get that passed pawn moving. So what can we do here? An obvious move might be to just go ahead and capture, but after you've counted up the material just to get an idea of where you are in the position, well, then you want to look at checks, captures, and threats. Checks first as they're most forcing, so we could go here and check. Maybe better is for us to go ahead and trade the rooks, because if we capture their rook with check and they recapture, well, now we can attack the pawn. If that pawn tries to run, we just go ahead and grab it. But maybe more likely their king would start heading back to the center of the board, but in the meantime we would be able to pick off their pawns, and try and promote ours. So we would at least get a draw out of it. Let's see how it goes. Capture, go after the pawn. Now we should pick off their pawn. And it's not going any further. So what would happen here? We're in front of the passed pawn. They could try and grab the opposition, but that would allow us to start moving up the board. And they would probably try, or they could do it immediately, try and get in front of us in the queening square. But as we move our king up the board, we would be able to grab the opposition in the future by moving that pawn. So we should be able to win. And because this is not an endgame video, I'm not going to show the conclusion. You can check that, try and figure that out on your own. But moving on to problem number 2. If we count up the material, we have 3 pawns. Our opponent only has 2. They do have a bishop versus a knight, but because the pawns are all on the same side of the board, the bishop doesn't have as much of an advantage. If there were pawns on both sides of the board, then a bishop would be a little bit better because it could move more quickly. All right, do we have any checks? Well, it looks like we do have a check, and it might be a decisive one. We'll have to figure that out with some calculation. All right, we have this possibility. Check, forking the king and the bishop. If the king goes after the pawns, we have time to pick off that bishop. Then if the king captures, our king could move up. Okay, but let me do this again. So we check, they go here, we grab the bishop, king takes pawn. Our king could come up and defend this pawn. The opponent would be able to pick off the other pawn Then our knight would be able to drop back and pick off this pawn. We might have to move our king over here to prevent their king from being able to move out to let their pawn promote. So let's take a look at this. I know that was a lot of arrows all over the place. Pause if you want to calculate more in your head before I start moving pieces. But let's try this. Check. We go after that. Now we have to protect this pawn because they can snatch this one up. But once they do that, we could move here, preventing them from protecting this pawn, and our knight can jump over here, pick that off, and then just start running that pawn up the board, and we should be able to prevent our opponent from moving their pawn because their king is in front of it at the moment. All right, on to problem number 3. We have 3 pawns. Our opponent has 2. We both have a rook and a queen. We just checked the opponent's king, so they stepped forward. But now what? How do we follow this up? Okay, it looks like we have a forcing move here. And it's a check, so definitely look for those checks first, because checks are very forcing. If a king is in check, there are 3 options: capture, block, or run. And if none of those are possible, it's a checkmate. So what do we want to do here? Well, if we look at checks, if we go here, we'll just be captured. The king will escape. What other checks do we have? Well, what about this rook? Looks like the king would just capture the rook, but then what? Well, then our queen could deliver a check here, forcing the king over, and then we mate with pawn and queen. So a great pattern there. Anytime there's a fianchettoed pawn position where your opponent has traded off the bishop, it leaves a lot of weaknesses in that area. And that's how we take advantage of that weakness, by sacrificing, bringing our queen up to check, and then queen and pawn work together for the mate. Okay, on to problem number, 4? Okay. What do we have here? There was a mate threat with queen and rook, so that's taken care of by blocking. But now, maybe we have another attack. The question is it a mate attack? Now, if we count up material, it's 4 pawns versus 4, but our opponent has this extra bishop. We could move here with a check. No, we can't even move there, excuse me, because the bishop's covering that. I don't know. I think I was looking at that wrong, where I thought the queen was on the dark squares and could go here at first. Okay. Well, we definitely have to watch out for this mate threat that our opponent has. So what happens if we check? They can just block. Oh, and then we have another check here. Okay, so hopefully you found that. We just check. They're forced to block. Then we go here, delivering a check. The king is forced into the corner, and then it's a back rank mate. Check, check, and back rank mate. All right, that was a nice little pattern. Hopefully you did well on that one and found the answer. Let's move on to problem number 5. Okay, rook was just checking the king, so it retreats back. how do we continue here? Let's look at the material first. We have 3 pawns. Our opponent has 5. We both have a bishop pair, but we have an extra knight, but we're down a rook. So rook for knight, or I should say knight for a rook and 2 pawns, 2 extra pawns. So 3 pawns versus 5. So we need to do something here to get an attack going. All right, look for checks first. The rook could go here and check, but the king would just capture. So that doesn't look so good. Bishop could go here, delivering a check, but the opponent could try and escape. Maybe a better check would be here. So that looks interesting. If we go there, the rook is preventing the king from moving to the center. Bishop would attack, the king would be forced to move here, and then our rook could deliver a mate on the back rank. So check and mate. So another great pattern with bishop and rook working together, a back rank mate. So we see how the bishop is preventing the king from coming off the back rank, as well as his own pieces are blocking him. All right. I'm torn on whether or not to do more or stop at 5. So I think I'll keep it short. I'll stop at 5 problems today. Let me know in the comments if you want me to try and do 10 puzzles in the future. 5. If you have an opinion, let me know. I'm kind of open to each. But to keep the video from dragging out too long, I will stop there. Feel free to leave those comments, like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and have a super chess day.